2020 is a seminal moment in Australian European history because of course the Endeavour sailed along the east coast of Australia. Now it's relevant for this region because at the time Cook noted in his diaries two particular landmarks, of course the Glasshouse Mountains, or the Glass Houses as he called them at the time, and what we now know as Moreton Bay. Like all great ideas, it was actually really simple. I believe that great exhibitions are built on really simple ideas that give us layers and layers of meaning and ways to engage with them. It was a really rich intersection. It was art, history, science, environment, and perhaps most importantly, ancient knowledge of the First Nations, all wrapped up into one experience. How could we connect with this story in a way that was contemporary, that was relevant to what had gone before, and I guess in some ways hopeful for the future?
These artists were a really interesting group of people. They come to the field of botanical art from various professions that are often science related. Botanists and people that are working professionally in those fields and take an interest in plants and have a deep knowledge and background in the field. So that's a really huge dimension to the practice of botanical art, which has that foundational dialogue with science. The Endeavour was damaged on the Great Barrier Reef, and they took shelter on the Endeavour River where they were rested for repairs for 6 weeks. And this is where a great many of the plants were collected.
The importance of these loans is that they bring the historical context to our contemporary works. And particularly with the herbarium specimens, which were collected in 1770, it is quite an experience to see these dried fragments of plants that are then reflected in plants that our artists have responded to.
In museums, there's nothing that replaces the experience or the ability to stand in front of what I call the real thing. Now, in this exhibition, we are surrounded by the real artworks that were created over the last 12 to 18 months. But the specimens, they were another story altogether. These specimens have travelled far further than I will ever travel in my life. They've been around the world and back again, and to have them here and to think that across time I'm standing in front of something very simple that was first collected 250 years ago and taken away, and yet here it is back here again.
So first of all, we had a selection of species, and 374 species were available to all the members of our society. They were given this list, and from there they made their selection. Then once the artists chose their work, it was then part of my role as the convener and also as a botanist to help them understand the actual botanical elements that needed to be included in their particular pieces of art. Once the artist had some working drawings, they were invited to send them through to see if the botanical elements were correct. And that was enjoyable as well, because often you could point out that they needed to include the stipules or put the points on the leaves or all of those wonderful things that gave the story of the plant, and that was really important. The artists are the key, and so are the plants.
This work was done over a number of months. When I started, the plant didn't have any flowers. So the drawing developed as the flowers developed. This gave me the opportunity to show the flowers in different stages, so from the new stems and buds developing through to the flowers opening, and then as the flowers age slightly and change colour. By the end of the flowering season, the seed pods are beginning to appear. So I was able to add these to the artwork, and it showed the whole cycle. The colours are also used to help anchor the composition of the painting. So I've used the darker greens in the mature leaves at the bottom and the browns of the seed pods to bring the viewer's eye into the painting, move up through those delicate stems, and the curves to bring it back and hopefully hold the eye of the viewer into the painting.
When I started doing botanical art in about 2006, that transferred to looking more closely at the plants and painting them And there's such a diversity in the way they are all gum nuts, but they're so different. And the flowers are basically of similar structure, but they've evolved to produce the most magnificent blooms. And the interesting thing is some of the largest trees have minute flowers, and some of the poorest looking trees, mainly in Western Australia, that are in the desert and they grow so poorly, and the wind breaks them down, and they have the most magnificent flowers. And wherever I go in Australia, I find a eucalypt that I can paint. The crepe flowers are minute and white, and somehow you have to find a way of showing them on your painting. So one of the tricks is you work out your composition so that you can get some of the flowers in front of a green leaf. So then you use this substance that's called masking fluid, and you apply it over your drawing of your flower, and it forms a barrier so that then when you paint over it with the green, the dark green, it leaves that area. That area doesn't receive any paint. And once you're sure that you have your leaf the exact colour you want, you let it dry, and then you remove it, say 24 hours later. You rub your finger along the paper and you remove this substance, and then they just stand out, they pop out at you. When I see eucalypts, it just sort of clicks, I have to paint it.
So the other aspects of the history that was challenging as well, and very important to us, was the Indigenous perspective. The people that Cook and Banks and Solander and Parkinson had contact with were the Guuga Yimithirr people of the Endeavour River region, and they noted down some of the language names from these people in their diaries and journals. So where possible, we have the scientific name of the plant, the common names of the plant, and then the Indigenous language name as well. Plants are lovely metaphors because they're living things, and so we do connect with them very intimately, and we can see within them really long scales of periods of time, so millennia of evolution, but we also see very fleeting aspects of time, so flowering and fruiting and the shedding of bark and dropping of leaves. And so those things are metaphors for our own mortality and the way that we emotionally connect with the artworks.
I'm really proud of this exhibition and what our collaboration has managed to achieve. I think I'm most excited that beyond Redcliffe Museum, others will get a chance to see it, and my hope is that they get a chance to engage with what we wanted, what we envisaged those 2 years ago, the chance to commemorate the 250 years and to think about that moment in history from lots of different perspectives.